Today's review is sponsored by the new restaurant chain, E. coli's. Our food is really the shit.
Watch it, Alan, I'm shooting.
Horrors of Malformed Men. Japanese horror movies. When you think of Japanese horror, the first thing that comes to mind are girls with long black hair and pale skin crawling on all fours, coming out of the TV, or making creepy noises with their mouth. And of course, we can't forget the king of the monsters, Godzilla. Creepy, long-haired girls and guys in rubber suits. These are the first things that pop into your head when it comes to Japanese horror. But let me introduce you to Teruo, aka Edogawa Rampo. He was a Japanese horror mystery writer that lived from 1894 to 1965. And you notice the nickname, Edogawa Rampo, that's because he was known as the Japanese Edgar Allan Poe. Many movies have been made based on his work, but my favorite would have to be Horrors of Malformed Men. Before we get into the movie, I have to talk about someone who was heavily responsible for me becoming a Japanese horror fan. There was my friend Rob, of course. He's the one who introduced me to this side of cinema by lending me Battle Royale, Audition, and Tetsuo the Iron Man. I owe my introduction to Japanese horror to my friend Rob. But the one who helped me discover so many great Japanese horror movies was a man by the name of Swann. I discovered his channel years ago, back when YouTube was still in its infancy. He was one of the first people to start reviewing movies on YouTube, creating his channel back in 2006. He lived in Japan. He would make vlogs about his life in Japan, and he had a series where he reviewed Japanese horror movies.
Hey everybody, welcome to Swann's Japanese Horror Reviews, episode 12. Today we're taking on Shion Sono's 2005 erotic and grotesque shocker, Strange Circus.
He's one of the reasons I watched so many Japanese horror movies. I never would have known about Edogawa Rampo or Horrors of Malformed Men without him. Tragically, Swann passed away back in 2010, 4 years after making his YouTube channel. It's really sad because he seemed like such a nice guy. His friends and family kept his channel up, so please go visit it. Rest in peace, Swann. You were the first YouTube channel I ever watched, and you introduced me to so many great movies.
And I'm Swann, and as always, see you next time.
Horrors of Malformed Men begins in an asylum. There we're introduced to Hidaiko. He's a man who's been committed for reasons he doesn't know. His memories are in shambles. All he knows is that he was studying medicine, he remembers this mysterious lullaby, and he has vague memories of this strange island that he knows he visited years ago. After somebody tries to kill him, he's able to escape from the madhouse. Once out in the free world, he learns about the death of a man who looks exactly like him. In an attempt to find out who he is, he takes on the role of this dead man. He infiltrates this new life with a wife and servants. His search soon leads him to a mysterious island which has been made as a utopia for deformed people. Horrors of Malformed Men is one of the most beautifully shot and shocking horror movies to come out of the 1960s. It came out in 1969, and I'd say it's still pretty gnarly by today's standards. We're given one of the most underrated villains in Japanese horror, Genzaburo. He's the leader of the island of malformed men. first he comes across as a sympathetic villain. He was born with webbed hands and looked down on by society. Certain events in his life led him to make this island as a safe haven for deformed people. What makes Genzaburo such a great bad guy is that he thinks what he's doing is right. That's what makes for some of the best villains. They think they're doing something noble. And it is noble. Genzaburo is making this island as a safe haven for deformed people. But how he runs this island is what makes him a monster. He and his followers kidnap women and make them their slaves on the island. Not only that, he kidnaps children and various other people with the intent of deforming them through surgery. He's making them into malformed people. It has elements of a mad scientist movie and body horror. Not David Cronenberg levels, but little sprinkles of body horror here and there.
どうしたんだ?
Once we get to the island, we're shown some rather disturbing imagery. A lot of it I can't show here because of the nudity. There is a lot of nudity in this flick, mostly female. There are scenes when you're just wading through a sea of tits. From Oregon to Dakota, they're showing their areolas. It does take a while to get to the island of malformed men. The main character doesn't arrive there until about the halfway point, but we're kept interested with the mystery. Our main character, Hidaiko, is trying to find out who he is. What's his connection to this dead guy that looks like him? What's his connection to this strange island? We're kept intrigued by seeing him infiltrate this dead guy's family. He has to walk a thin line because one screw-up could blow his cover. He has to pretend to need reading glasses even though he doesn't need them. He's right-handed, whereas his doppelganger is left-handed, so he has to try to avoid moments when he needs to write with his left hand.
大関さん、これじゃ使い物になりませんな。
It's a good build-up to the island of malformed men. The movie isn't that predictable. There are moments that you can see coming from a mile away, especially if you watch a lot of movies, but there are moments that take you completely off guard.
チョコ、どうした? チョコ、チョコ!
My only issues are what happens towards the end of the movie. It gets a little exposition heavy, which doesn't ruin the movie, but yeah, could have been done a little better. My main problem is how they try to portray Genzaburo towards the end of the movie. They try to make us empathize with him. Now, Genzaburo is a sympathetic villain, but he's not a redeemable villain.
お前たち二人のことは
I am gonna get into some minor spoilers here, but nothing that ruins any major plot points. In the third act, we learn that Genzaburo was married to a normal-looking woman. He absolutely loved her, but she was ashamed of him. She tried to hide him away, and she eventually ended up sleeping with another man. This is good motivation for why Genzaburo would make this island as a utopia for deformed people. But then we find out what he did to this woman. I understand being angry, but my God. I've been cheated on before, I know it sucks, but Jesus Christ, man, this is going too far. I'm not gonna spoil it here, all I'm gonna say is, dear God. It's a great scene, and it's the most disturbing scene in the movie. It does make for a great villain, but like I said, not a redeemable villain. onto that, the fact that he kidnaps women and makes them slaves, and the fact that he kidnaps people with the intent of deforming them through surgery. I'm not gonna feel sorry for this guy at the end of the movie. Luckily, it doesn't ruin the movie, and the ending is saved with some shock moments and a good final image. This is a good Japanese horror movie, especially for people looking for something different. Don't go into this expecting Ju-on or Ring-U. This was a movie that broke down all kinds of taboos in 1969. It can be a disturbing movie, but one that's worth a watch. And with that, let's get to the Grindhouse rankings. We've got a body count of about 9. The kills are rather simple, with stabbings, strangulations, and drownings. But the creep factor doesn't come from the kills, it comes from the story. The nudity is high with a lot of women's breasts. There are quite a few scenes with full frontal nudity. We get some shocking images here, especially the scene towards the end in the cave. Genzaburo is a fantastic villain, one of the most underrated in Japanese horror. We feel sorry for him at first, but as the movie goes along, he becomes irredeemable. I just wish they followed through with that at the end. The first half has a good mystery to keep us interested until we get to the island. And once we get to the island, things get disturbing. It gets a little exposition heavy in the third act, but we still get a good ending. I'm giving this a 4.3 out of 5. If you're a Japanese horror fan, I'd say check this one out. Just be ready for some shocking shit. As always, I want to thank everyone for watching and supporting my channel. If you're new here, please subscribe and give this video a thumbs up if you like what I do here, or give it a thumbs down if you don't like what I do here. Leave a comment down below. What are some of your favorite island-based horror movies? This is the Maniac, here to remind you that the Grindhouse will never die. When looking at this scene, am I the only one who sees an evil Jack Sparrow?